Hey everyone, welcome back to Joe on Joe. It is me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and this is the G.I. Joe podcast where we watch every single episode of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, the animated series in sequential order, and talk about it mystery science style. With me this week is a friend. He's new to California. He's a player in the geek world because his company is called Geek Riot Media, and he helps put on some of the best comic shows in the South California,
Yeah,
LA area.
You know better than me. You've been living here longer.
That's so scary to hear because I'm still Chicago in my heart. But his name is Kris Longo, and he's a delight. And welcome to Joe on Joe, Kris.
Well, thank you, Joe. I'm so happy to be here today.
Very happy to have you. So as we set up top, you're a founder of Geek Riot Media. Tell our listeners a little bit about Geek Riot Media. What do you guys do in the comic space?
Yeah, happy to tell you. You know, Geek Riot Media is probably invisible to a lot of fans because what we do is largely behind the scenes. So we help comic book publishers, pop culture events, comic conventions, websites, things like that. We help them find new opportunities to earn money and stay in business. So that includes advertising, sponsorship, things like that. So we're all, both nerds, comic book fans, and ad sales and geeks. So very interesting hybrid stripe. There's not a lot of people out there who have those two particular skills and know-hows. Yeah. But we do that, and it's a really exciting thing to be able to do, to know that your contributions kind of keep this world moving forward.
Yeah, I like to think of you guys as you are part of the rising tide that is lifting all our ships.
Oh, thanks. I'll take that.
In a real
Might
way.
be overstating it a little bit.
No. Well, you're one of the waves in the ocean. You know,
okay.
You're part of what's keeping comic fandom, geekdom going. You know.
Well, thank you.
So I think we're roughly the same age. Growing up, there was a dearth of comic stuff. There was like one T-shirt that was made, or like they'd be like, "Hey, we got a new poster this year," and be like, "Oh my God, Marvel's putting out one new poster," And now, because of people like you, because of people who look for opportunities to put advertisers with the properties that people love, there's now so many options for a fan to express their fandom.
Almost too many options.
You're almost right there, but it's such a different world.
Oh my gosh,
so key, and it's because of stuff that you guys do.
If I was growing up now, I don't know what I would do with myself, quite frankly.
Yeah,
it's an embarrassment of riches, and I actually have to stop and tell my kid all the time, you have no idea what you're growing up in, what kind of a culture you're growing up in. The fact that you have, how the internet has provided access to just about everything you want on demand. On top of that, the fact that we culture and pop culture at large seems to be celebrating all of the things that ostensibly you and I loved as a kid, and we're kind of challenged to find other people to share it with us and things like that. It's just a pretty amazing time and place to be a fan. It
is, and it's I think the downside of some of that could be that it fractures the fandom in a way that doesn't provide the let's be frank, financial push for certain properties to be successful.
True.
For example, the first thing I can think of is the Green Lantern cartoon, which was fantastic. And if that was the only cartoon at that quality level that was on the air for like geeks, comic fans, let's say in 1995, that would have been the biggest cartoon in the world.
Right.
But when it came out, there was a lot in the landscape, and the toys, it didn't push the toys. Plus, the movie hurt it a little bit. But it would have been huge in 1995.
Totally.
And what happened? They canceled it because it didn't sell enough toys, because there wasn't enough money going into that IP for that company to focus their energies on, and that's one of the dangers that you have here. So you get, if you look at it on like cable television or internet television, there's so many great shows that just never find an audience.
It's really true, but I think that's one of the things I like about working in the convention space is that, comic conventions are essentially, or should be, celebrations of fandom, you know, and if you go to a con like our con, which is the Long Beach Comic Expo,
coming up February 16th and 17th. Listeners, if you're in California, get there.
Thank you, by the way. If you come to a show like ours, you're going to find people like you who love the Green Lantern show and kind of lament that it didn't have the life that it should have. And, that's what this community is all about. These things may not have new episodes or new toys or whatnot, but they live on in some way because fans are passionate about them.
Yeah, they really do. And so with Long Beach, you are the managing director of both the Long Beach Comic Expo and the Long Beach Comic Con.
That's what they say.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what they say. And the Expo is this February, and the con is usually in like September.
Yeah, we are usually hovering around Labor Day weekend.
Labor Day, yeah.
Yeah, so either that weekend or a weekend close to it.
Yeah, you guys always put on a good show, and you're always trying to do different and exciting programming.
Thanks. You know, it's getting tougher and tougher. It's a pretty crowded market out there.
It is.
Particularly in Southern California.
There's a ton in California.
Yeah.
Like, for real. So the Expo itself, you were saying that you're going to have a certain, one of your special guests should be of note to Joe on Joe fans.
I would think so, yeah.
You're doing a panel on the Justice League Detroit era with Mr. Jerry Conway, who wrote some G.I. Joe, and Mr. Chuck Patton, who was the art director for the DIC era of G.I. Joe.
I hope the Joe fans are writing this down.
Yeah. So Joe on Joe fans, if you're out there, you're listening, you're in California, and you want to get some G.I. Joe questions, hit up the Long Beach Comic Expo. That's in Long Beach. It's at the Long Beach Convention Center.
Long Beach Convention Center.
It's right by the Queen Anne?
Pine
Mary?
Avenue, yep, right. Not too far from the Queen Mary.
Queen Mary, yeah, the big boat. And Long Beach is actually really nice. It's come a long way since Snoop sang about it.
It really has. It really has. You know, we're in a very businessy area of Long Beach.
Oh, it's great.
A very family friendly area
very
too.
Easy to get to.
So we have our share of restaurants and hotels. There's no shortage of amenities there if you're coming with families or kids. It's a very safe and very practical area. Lots of parking too.
And actually really easy to get to on train.
Oh,
train
that too.
takes you like a block away.
Yeah.
Super easy. And Joe and Joe listeners, if you're going to Long Beach Comic Expo, you need to use the Joe on Joe promo code. So go to longbeachcomicexpo.com, click the ticket link, and plug in the promo code Joe on Joe. You're going to get $10 off your ticket. That is $10. That's a lot of scratch. Get it. Save it. Tell them Joe on Joe sent you.
$10 more to buy action figures on the show floor.
Boom. So
yeah, we have a very exciting show coming up. We've got some really great guests. A couple other names I'll throw at you. We have Rick Leonardi, Ron Mars, Kate Leth.
That's awesome.
I'm excited to meet. Ivy Doom Kitty for the cosplayers.
Very
She's
cool.
going to be our big cosplay guest. And then on the publisher side, we've got Tokyo Pop, Aspen, Top Cow, Prism. We have Golden Apple Books.
Golden Apple Books represent. Speaking of the Golden Apple, did you guys see? If you guys watched Jimmy Fallon, you all saw Sam Jackson give a shout out to Golden Apple on Jimmy Fallon. So if the Avengers last year weren't enough for you, we get Nick Fury himself giving us a shout out just last week.
He's a great customer.
He's a long-time customer. He's a great dude. Yeah, he's really fun. And he once told Sharon Leibowitz, our owner, she said something about him being off on long shoots and like being away from home. She's like, well, where do you buy your comics? Like when you're in New York? And he looks at her and goes, I like to think that he said it with an MFer in there. He goes, I don't buy my comics anywhere else. He goes, I only shop here. That's why you guys because we just hold books for him. And,
my gosh.
Yeah, he literally is so loyal to them because they've known him for probably almost 40 years.
What an endorsement.
Yeah, when he was just a coming actor, he'd go there to buy his books, and they were great to him and friendly to him, and so on and so forth.
See, that's great. I love that you can tell he's like what, in 8-9 movies deep now with the with the Marvel universe.
More than that, I gotta think.
And
right?
he's still probably one of their greatest cheerleaders for that enterprise.
Yeah. The Spider-Man trailer, as we're recording this, just dropped yesterday. That looks amazing.
It looks really good. It looks really good. Mysterio, possibly a good guy.
Yeah. Well,
unclear.
It's Mysterio though.
Yeah.
So it's a spoiler. Well, it's in the trailer. I'm doubting whether or not Hydro Man and or Sandman. I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be Hydro Man mixed in with dirt, but if they're even real or if they're part of his illusions.
I think we're a long ways out from finding the truth.
I'm so excited.
But it looks good.
Looks really good. And they do give him the bubble. I know I saw some people complaining that you saw a faceless.
No, when he was in the sky, he had
he has the bubble. So of course you're going to,
They're not going to hire Gyllenhaal and keep a helmet on him
in
the whole
comics,
time.
Right.
Yeah.
In the comics, you get away with masking a dude forever, but come on.
Right.
I want to see Gyllenhaal. But again, 15 years ago, he never would have had the mask on.
Oh no,
they would have given him like reflective goggle glasses or something like that. That the art director would have said, "This is representative of his Bob Fishbowl dome."
Or worse yet, he would have been given the electro treatment from the Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, I did not know that electrocution can straighten teeth. I feel like that's a Dr. Mindbender level exercise of orthodontistry.
Joe, scientists are making breakthroughs every single day in this country.
So, guys, go to @LongBeach_CC on Facebook, on Twitter and Instagram. Go to @LB Comic Expo. That's where you can find more about the Long Beach Comic Expo. While you're scouring the internet for that and your hentai, go to Joe on Joe Pod. It's on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Check me out. Follow me. Let me know what you think of the show. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com and drop a line and say, yo, Joe. Now, Kris Longo,
Yeah.
G.I. Joe.
Well, listen.
What's your background, baby?
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be very honest with you. This is probably going to be like therapy for me today, because my goal here is to leave here feeling like a little bit of a G.I. Joe fan.
Sweet.
Because I have a story. I can tell you the source of my G.I. Joe bias, and I will say I'm not proud of this. I'm trying to work through it. I'm trying to get it out of my system.
Fair enough.
But I still find myself feeling these things involuntarily. Okay, so summer of 1983, a lot of anticipation for Return of the Jedi. I was just at that age where I think I was starting to get hooked on serialized things. So knowing how long we'd been waiting since the reveal of Darth Vader being the father,
huge.
So that's a long 3 years for a kid, right? So we had in our neighborhood, we had a mom and pop drugstore, a fairly gigantic one at that, and they had a toy aisle in there that was pretty shockingly strong for a drugstore, and they had a pretty big selection of Star Wars stuff in there for most of my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so summer of '83, Jedi comes out, we all love it. I'm going to that drugstore all the time. As soon as money comes in my pocket, I'm going and spending it and I was a completist, so I wanted to have everything.
Good man.
So I mailed in my proof of purchases for the Anakin Skywalker
that's awesome.
Ghost
Yes,
Force figure.
yes.
So I did all the right things, right?
Yeah.
So the phenomenon back then was something like Star Wars. Like it didn't really occur to me, but Star Wars just back then ended. Like they were done, right? It's not like franchises now where you wait 2 years and then Chris Pratt's in something, right? Like the franchises were over. So Star Wars came and went. Return of the Jedi rather came and went. And then I remember, flash forward to the holidays or maybe January after Return of the Jedi, I had some holiday money burning a hole in my pocket. I go into that drugstore. And I go in, and the Star Wars toys were now like less than halved on that shelf. And in their place were all of these G.I. Joe figures. Woo-hoo! So in my mind, a switch flipped, and I was like, G.I. Joe killed Star Wars. So, and obviously, I didn't know anything about licensing or the toy business, or when there's no movie driving sales, there's no toy. All of this didn't exist to me. So in my mind, that was it. It was just cut and dry. G.I. Joe killed Star Wars. So I've grown up a little since 1983, 1984, I hope. And I recognize that G.I. Joe did not actually kill Star Wars, but some of those biases wind up sticking with you.
Sure.
And I do find myself occasionally grinding my teeth at G.I. Joe or even like Hasbro-related things.
Oh,
but
my gosh.
I'm trying hard.
I'm trying hard. This is you might be the first true member of Cobra that we've had on this show.
Maybe. I'm not proud of this. I'm being honest with you.
No, this is great. I feel like as you're saying this, I realize I want to change my Joe and Joe specialty. Maybe I'm like the Joe and Joe therapist now. Maybe I'm here to help you work through your G.I. Joe issues.
You could make a killing.
Oh my gosh. So because of that, did you must not have had any of the toys? Did you watch any of the cartoons?
When you're a kid and people don't know what to give you for your birthday, like there were occasions where I would get a G.I. Joe action figure. I'm like, oh, thanks a lot. Throw that right over my shoulder. I had friends who kind of transitioned out of Star Wars and into G.I. Joe, and I just wasn't going along for the ride. So kidding aside, like there was a little bit of like an alienating factor to it because it was something that everybody around me seemed to be embracing, and I just wasn't having any part of it.
You're hardcore. You went
stubborn.
punk. You were toy punk.
I was
That's
stubborn.
what you were. Yeah.
I was stubborn.
Yeah.
I walled myself in.
Did you transfer to anything else? Did you go Transformers? Did you go He-Man?
You know, I hung on to Star Wars for as long as I could back then, and you know, the licensing kind of dried up a little bit.
The era you're describing, all I can think of is that post Jedi generation of Star Wars vehicles that were like concept art vehicles that were terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Like terrible. And I just get sad.
Yeah.
But that must have been your bedroom.
That probably was. Yeah, it probably looked a lot like you're thinking. But I went, you know, my other passion back then was Spider-Man. So I went a little bit closer to Spider-Man for a few more years. And then, you know, 12, 13, other things start calling for your attention.
Sure.
And I wound up leaving a little bit of fandom behind and then came back to it in a big way in my 20s. So
that's great. And comic books the whole time, or?
I was a pretty rock solid Marvel comic reader in up until I was about 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have most of those comics too, even though I didn't take particularly great care of them. They do mean a lot to me.
And have you circled back collection wise? I know you're reading comic. When you do what you do,
yeah.
You know, you just end up reading all comics all the time.
They find their way into
but
their home.
Are you back to collecting? Like, do you collect it all? Because
No.
you're married, you've got a son, and
I wouldn't call myself a collector. I do have things that are valuable to me that I kind of keep wrapped in plastic and keep in a safe place. But for the most part, the idea of collecting or the concept of it, it's just not something that I have time for.
Yeah, and you also you managing the cons, you're probably getting personal access to a lot of the people that, from a fan perspective, they're like, oh my God, I'm going to meet Frank Miller. I'm going to go out and you're just facilitating it and working with him. So it does take some of the luster off.
Yeah, it does. But, you know, it's in some cases I've had the opportunity to say hi to people or thank you to people who, you know, meant a lot as a kid. You know, you facilitated a big one for me by getting me to meet John Carpenter.
I do what I can.
That was really a landmark moment for me.
I've talked about him on this show a lot. We do the John Carpenter signing every year at Golden Apple for Halloween, and he's a great guy, and he and his wife Sandy King are fantastic and very gracious and very generous. And the more I think about it, and the more time goes by, and pop and culture kind of goes the way it goes, and people reflect on the movies of their youth, like Carpenter was like the quiet wallpaper of so much of all of our youths. Like
so much.
Like there's just always a Carpenter movie. There's like they say like there's a tweet for everything.
Yeah.
You know, like some bad tweet that comes back to haunt you. There's like a Carpenter movie for everything.
There really is.
Yeah. There's some aspect of society or pop culture or something that you like. You go, oh yeah, Assault on Precinct 13. Oh yeah, Escape from New York. Oh yeah, They Live. Oh yeah, Starman. Oh yeah, like all this stuff, and you're like, wow, The Thing, quietly just made these amazing movies that really resonate.
Yep. His run up until 1990 can't be beat.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many classic, great movies in there.
Completely.
Did I tell you what he said to me when I met him?
Get out.
No. Well, no, almost.
Sorry, that was a Superman quote.
I was the first person in line to meet him. I was very nervous, and I said to him, hello, Mr. Carpenter. I just wanted to tell you it's an honor to meet you. And he said to me, knock it off. Give me what you want me to sign.
That's great.
So he wasn't having anybody blowing smoke or anything like that, which I loved.
No,
and then we had a nice chat about the Halloween movie. So.
Yeah. The first time I met him, I was able to chat with him, and I totally think he appreciated it. That for me, his movies were stuff I watched with my dad.
Yeah.
Like, and my dad's not way into the movies and cultures. He's just not. That's not his thing. But for some reason, he loved some John Carpenter movies. I don't even know if he realized it was all by the same guy. He just loved Escape from New York. He loved The Thing. He loved Assault on Precinct 13.
To think the same guy did Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13, and Starman.
Yes, totally.
It's bonkers.
And strangely enough, Halloween was my mom's favorite movie. No, I don't even think I ever put that part together. Yeah. That was like her favorite go-to scary movie when we were like kids growing up. She would always say, "You guys got to watch this movie." Blah blah blah. So I was able to share that with him. Of like, you quietly made this bonding thing that I would just sit there on Sundays and watch Escape from New York every time it was on cable.
I'm sure he likes.
He'd be like, "That New York prison movie's on." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it."
I'm sure he appreciated hearing that instead of another person telling him, "Oh, you're a legend." Or
I think so.
Like which clearly he's not comfortable with.
Which is great.
Yeah,
got to keep it humble. But all props and all respect. So listen, I'm happy to have been able. I love putting people together with things that they enjoy, and that's what Joe on Joe is all about. So, Kris, today we are watching an episode called Shadow of a Doubt.
All right.
Now, this is actually, yesterday I recorded an episode, and that also was a recycled plot. This is another recycled plot. They've done this plot like 2 or 3 times, where what happens is a Joe gets accused of being a traitor.
Is there a trial?
No, there's no trial.
Okay.
But it's just well worn, you know. And we are coming to the end of the series, so I get it. They might have been running on fumes, but that was disappointing. The bright side is it's a lot of Storm Shadow, which is great. There's origin snippets of Storm Shadow that's thrown in here. Like, they talk some real talk about why he joined Cobra, which is awesome because that's something that you never got on the show.
Okay.
And it's good. Like, it's a fun, ripping episode. It's just, we've seen this played out. We saw it twice played out with the same character, Dusty.
See, it's going to be new to me. So.
Yeah, it absolutely. It's just like that was that NBC's reruns slogan for a while. Hey, it's new to you.
Yeah,
which is true. It's like, yeah, you've never seen it. You're going to love it.
So I promise you I'm going to be open-minded. I'm going to behave.
Okay. Yeah, don't punch anything. Don't break anything. No. We are in my home. Be a good guest. And if you don't have anything nice to say, just remember you're on a podcast, so you have to say something.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's different rules than what your mom taught you. And so with that, listeners, actually, before we start, we're going to get a quick word from our sponsor, the Dreamer Comics Podcast.
Joe and Joe listeners know that I love comic books, G.I. Joe, pop culture, and my wife and dogs are pretty great too. I also love learning how people get to where they're at and where they're going. All of that comes together over at the Dreamer Comics Podcast, except for my family stuff. That'd be really weird. Omar Spahi interviews someone from the comic industry every episode, and they break down the journey that creator took to get from reading comics to creating them. Comic luminaries like Jim Valentino, Ross Ritchie, Kyle Higgins, and so many more can be found at DreamerComicsPodcast.com or find them anywhere you get your podcasts. Everyone has a dream. Learn how to make yours a reality.
And that's how you break into comics. And then when you make your comic, you want to sell some advertising, you go to Kris Longo with Geek Riot Media, and they're going to put some advertisers in your comic book, and everyone's going to be rich, happy, fat, and healthy. And now we're going to get ready to watch Shadow of a Doubt. You ready, Kris Longo?
I'm a little dizzy from that transition you just did, which was brilliant. But yes, I'm ready.
It's what I do. Now, all right, guys, get ready. It is season 2, disc 3 in the DIC series, and here we go. So here we go. We're in some like desert, don't exactly know where we're at, Kris, but we've got a couple. That's General Hawk and Storm Shadow. And this era is very toy centric. So this is very, like, as much as the show obviously is toy centric, this show is very much. We need to show you exactly these are the new vehicles.
So here are the toys. Now build an episode around them.
Yes, okay, exactly. Yes. And so this opening stinger is 100% that. There's like, it's, you just start. You're fighting. Here's this new toy. You want to get it. It shoots a missile that has these weird glider control. It's basically a drone missile.
Yeah.
And then Cobra jumps in this. Now this is cool. This is the Cobra. It's like the Paralyzer or something like that. Blanking out. Of course, I looked this up, and of course, my memory for the names of this era are terrible. Parasite. He just said it. That's Parasite.
Okay.
So I had to look up the Parasite. I liked it because the G.I. Joe always had they had a troop transport from the earliest days, and it was an APC, and it was covered. It was like you could pop the cover off, and you would put all the dudes in chairs and sit them down, and it would store, I don't know how many, but like 25 Joes or something. So it was perfect. It was great. Everyone had one. It was awesome. Everything popped off. You could get them in real easy, sit them all, tighten them up. Hawk, by the way, is getting captured. Meanwhile, Storm Shadow has captured Cobra Commander. So this Parasite was Cobra's troop transport. And I saw it, and I'm watching this episode. I got excited. I'm like, I didn't know they ever did that for Cobra. That's really cool. I look up the toy. They did, but all the troops ride on the outside.
That kind of defeats the entire purpose.
So sorry for the long setup there, but like the Joe one, everyone was protected and under canopy and like transport. They just made a vehicle that had a lot of pegs on the outside so you could stand your dudes on, which is cool. And it says it held up to like 17 figures, which is great, and it looks fun and lots of all that stuff. But like Cobra just doesn't care about their soldiers.
Right. Well, they were all expendable, right?
Yeah. I feel like the guys that are writing that are looking across at the APC just like jealous.
Right.
Like we don't. It's to put it in Star Wars parlance. It's the fact that TIE fighters didn't have shields.
Right.
While X-wings did.
Well, thank you for bringing it back to Star Wars.
Always.
The translation is appreciated.
Always and always will.
A late comment. I like the aircraft that's nimble enough to fly through caves.
Yeah. Well, that was a missile.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's also another hallmark I think of this run is, do you see how these are just glory shots? There's no dialogue, there's no plot, there's no anything. It is just glory shots and close-ups of vehicles moving in the desert. We're just eating up time.
Right. It's remarkable. It really is like it's almost like a living catalog for a product.
Yeah. There's nothing happening on this episode right now. We're just eating up time. Like, you could have just jumped to that. And it only makes me think that like they finished and they were like, we're 30 seconds short on this episode. Yeah. And if you notice, all those things were close-ups. So that might be they took a master that existed and just did a zoom.
Entirely possible.
Entirely possible that they didn't actually redraw some of that. They just zoomed in on it. Because if you're going to feature the toys, why wouldn't you actually show the toys driving? Why just close-ups of these wheels?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know how accurate I am when I say stuff like that. But I love trying to distinguish where and how and why things get to where they're at.
It's an interesting point. What year would this episode be?
This aired it was 91 or 92. Let me get you an exact on that. 1991. This was November 6th, 1991. Also written by Michael Charles Hill.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, this was the golden era of over-the-top villain voices in animation.
Yes.
If I tried to do that, I would lose my voice for a week.
Yeah.
So hats off to those voice actors who could really do amazing things.
They really could. I think then things went a little too far the other direction when they started bringing in like celebrity voices, or at least for the major motion pictures, where it was just so flat.
Yeah.
Because it's just celebrities being themselves. And you're like, no, I want to give me a little animation into it.
Right.
Give me a little.
And then obviously the flip side of that is Robin Williams,
Aladdin,
who's
so brilliant.
Bananas,
So brilliant. Recently I watched his first, it was on YouTube. It's Robin Williams' first appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, like the first time. If you've never seen it, you need to watch it. It's everything.
Yeah.
It is everything. It's like 25 minutes long. He just takes over the show, but in a very humble way. Like, he's just being him, and Johnny like encourages him to just be, you go for it, kid. And
in and out of his chair.
Yeah, and he had already been on Mork and Mindy, and he was a known dude, but that back then Tonight Show was everything. That would literally make your career. And he just, oh my God, it's so brilliant.
He took advantage.
It's so brilliant. So on the show here, Storm Shadow, who, remember, this season of G.I. Joe, at this era, Storm Shadow's working with G.I. Joe. So if you don't know this, Storm Shadow is a bad guy. He's a ninja. He trained with, he fought in using comic book continuity. He was in the military with Snake Eyes in Vietnam. And after the war, he took Snake Eyes in and trained Snake Eyes to be a ninja. Snake Eyes is the dude that's all in black. Do you know what Snake Eyes is?
I do.
Okay. On the cartoon, because Snake Eyes is mute, he doesn't do a lot. Like, he's in this episode, but they never really found a good way to use him. A couple episodes, he would be the co-star, and it really didn't work because someone would be like, Snake Eyes, let's go down to the store. And then they would just cut to a stock photo of him going like,
giving a nod.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It works about as well on the cartoon as it does on a podcast. And this era, he had redeemed himself. And that, I think, came from the comic book because Larry, I believe I read somewhere that Larry kind of, when he was writing the second iteration of in the comic book, he did it. And then when he was writing the file cards, he just turned Storm Shadow good. Before Hasbro could realize that he did it. Like, it was in the comic book. And Storm Shadow redeemed himself. And they were like, okay, I guess Storm Shadow's going to be a good guy now. And in the comic, which, by the way, we're going over on my Patreon podcast called Joe and Joe Illustrated. We go over every issue of the comic book, page by page, panel by panel. You can find that at patreon.com/Joe and Joe Pod. And in that they it was a big story arc, and he realized redemption, and I need to stop living for revenge, and this and that and the other. So this is playing with why Storm Shadow is on the Joe team. And at one point he mentions here, like, I'm only in Cobra to find out the secret, the identity of the killer of my family, or my family's revenge, or something.
So is this a
like
little
that.
intentional continuity cleanup?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
It's
see
great.
now.
It's great. It's huge. Like,
I'm going to pay a compliment to G.I. Joe. This is coming from the heart.
Get ready, guys. This is going to be recorded.
I was extraordinarily charmed by G.I. Joe's The Toys That Made Us episode.
Yes.
Largely because it was not clear to me how the relationship with the toys and the comics worked. And I thought that was really fascinating. I thought Larry's process was fascinating. That was probably, ironically, that probably wound up being my favorite episode of both seasons so far. It was clearly a highly creative time at Hasbro, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. One, about the quality of that show, and two, Larry's contribution to it. And I think that the biggest lesson there is this company, Hasbro, and probably because they didn't know any better, they weren't staffed, they just weren't capable of doing it. They went to a creative and said, help us. You guys handle this part. We'll do all this part, and together we'll all make $1 jillion. Mm-hmm. And that's so huge. And
they went out of house too to do that. Yeah. They went to a different
right.
creative shop altogether, unheard of at the time.
And there's something to be said for that, where sometimes you got to let your creators create,
right?
And not let them do what they do.
Being good at making toys is not being good at story. Those are very different things. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That is how our new secret base is located. Cobra stock must be down.
Just the opposite. Cobra is most definitely on the rise. Well, Storm Shadow, are you coming?
On my way, Commander.
Give them the fences and let them play in their playground.
Yeah, exactly. One of my first gigs in comics was when I was on staff at DC, and I was on the team that created DC's Bionicle line of comics.
Yeah,
with Lego,
mm-hmm.
And it was basically the same thinking. It was Lego realizing we need some outside resources on the story side. We want a comic as a companion. And but we also want to make sure it's a comic that's made by people who understand how to make comics and the subtleties within. So that coming from that background back in like 99, 2000, watching that episode, it was like, yeah, that's the way you get it done.
It's great.
That's the right way to do it.
That's great. So we're going to circle back on that real quick, because I want to find out more about your time at DC. Where we're at on the show is Hawk still being held captive by Cobra. Storm Shadow's broken Cobra Commander out of prison. And now they're gloating in front of Hawk. Cobra Commander's biggest failure is always the gloat. Mm-hmm. Always the gloat. He's had schemes that have almost been successful.
And it's the premature gloat that comes back to haunt him.
Here comes the gloat. So we're going back. We're going to a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Today's Filecard feature is on the Evader driver, codenamed Darklon. Darklon is a distant cousin of the Destro clan and the last of a long line of privateers, mercenaries, and investment bankers. From his cast iron castle in the Alps, he dispatched his private armies to do battle for the highest bidder until Destro called upon him to lead his legions in his bid to take over Cobra. Quote, completely unhindered by ideology or ethics, Darklon is motivated purely by greed. His telephone solicitors have been known to drum up business for his mercenary army by offering reasonable hourly rates and cash rebates. Darklon is like the low-rent Destro. His figure is crazy. He's got bright orange legs, he's got red pants, and a green tunic, and the green tunic looks like it's got like crocodile skin. I'm sure it's a kind of like Beachhead's outfit was. And then his mask is just Darth Vader insane crazy. My recollection of Darklon was that they used him a lot in, Larry used him a lot in the comic book, and I liked him in the comic book. But this toy is just out of control. There's so much going on here. I love that he's a low-rent Destro, though, and he's like Destro's cousin, etc., and so on. That's awesome. The line about the telephone solicitors raising money for their army is just fantastic. And his rifle is pretty awesome. It's like a rifle with, it looks like an air gun attached to it that maybe like rotates the barrel or something like that. It's kind of cool. So I'm a fan of Darklon. I think he's got a lot of detractors out there. I'm not necessarily a fan of his look. He looks kind of crazy. Yeah, maybe he's colorblind. I don't know. But Darklon, whoever you are, Destro's half cousin, we salute you.
So the Joes are making their assault on this Cobra base. They're trying to track Storm Shadow, and the Joes all believe Storm Shadow truly has turned too. We're also going to get introduced to the Night Creeper. He's been on many episodes, but those are the Cobra ninjas. So now Storm Shadow is going to supplant Night Creeper. This is another plot point trope that they literally just did 2 episodes prior of. Here's a new guy, and he's supplanting the old guy, so the old guy's going to feel bad about it.
Right.
And to be fair, though, they did that. Larry did that a lot in the comics as they were introducing, and you have to, though, because you're introducing so many new characters so frequently that it's an easy kind of go-to of like, oh, okay, you're the new mercenary. Well, I'm the old mercenary, and I think I can beat you, but then the new guy has to win because he's the new toy to sell.
Right.
So I get it.
And they weren't counting on guys like you who were going to pay attention for 20, 30 years and tear it apart.
100%. So we try to not tear apart, but to try to, point out, okay, well, we've seen this a little bit before.
I hear you.
A little bit of humor there with the Night Creeper falling into some garbage. It's funny, he fell into a box of cardboard boxes, which is what you do if you're a stuntman, and like it's a cartoon, you don't need that.
Were those helipod type things? Were they?
They were toys.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
So essentially, if it's on screen, it was
much.
manufactured.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a couple notable things that they never made. Cobra always had really cool airplanes, like large transport planes. Like there's one with a giant Cobra head, and in the comic there was this huge, massive Cobra helicopter that they always used, and they never made a toy of those. And I always thought that was a missed opportunity because the helicopter could have been like the G.I. Joe Tomahawk, which was the great big brown huge helicopter you've probably seen, and it was a great play toy. They had done a similar one like that for Cobra with like their transport chopper, and comic readers, you guys know the one I'm talking about. It's this really wide thing, and it would pick up various tanks and stuff. That would be great for the toys. It would be huge. And then they had a giant C-130 basically with a huge Cobra head for the front, and that's how Cobra in the comics or in the cartoon traveled mostly. Their plane would fly over various towns and do various tomfoolery. But you could do the same thing there. Make this big C-130 collapsible wings, so you could store it easy. Oh, yeah. And then just in the back have it drop down and be able to pull a HISS tank up into it. Like that would have been an epic.
They would have made a few bucks.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Those are the two that I lament that they never made. But for the most part, yes, the smaller, quote unquote, smaller vehicles are pretty much all toys. This is also an era where they got away from Cobra got away from doing personalities as far as the bad guys on the toy line. They were mostly Vipers, so they were mostly specialties, not personalities. Right. So the early eras, it was Zartan and Baroness and Major Blood and these specific dudes. Mindbender. This is a guy who did this, and now he's working for Cobra. And in this era, they were doing more troop building things. So they said, well, these are all Cobra Eels. These are all Cobra, range Vipers. These are this type of Viper. So to try to encourage you, the kid, to buy multiples of them.
Oh, okay. That makes sense, I suppose.
So like troop building concepts. But in retrospect, you look at it, and you just see a lot of the life and personality go away. Because all the file cards are just not very specific, which we know specifics is where the magic is, right?
Were the sculpts the same from...
Yeah, the sculpts were the same. But, they could have been... You could have easily just said, this is... this range Viper is actually a dude named Bill.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he hates G.I. Joe.
Right.
But it's like the file cards were just so generic because it wasn't Bill is from Tanzania and he's a mercenary and he wears the skull. He wears the skull helmet because his face got blown off in the war and now he fights to get his revenge against G.I. Joe. Like stuff like that. Which as a kid that ignites the imagination.
Absolutely.
But as a troop builder, it's just another troop, just another dude. Like in this case, this Night Creeper guy, he's like the leader, but he's just a regular Night Creeper. On the show, he's a leader, but at the toy, he was just a Night Creeper. He's just a ninja, versus Storm Shadow, who's awesome.
I understand why you would
So
be mad
DC
at me,
Comics,
but
what were you doing when you worked there?
Oh gosh, I was mostly working in the ad sales group, but an offshoot of that ad sales group was we would sell and package custom comics. So I would go and pitch marketing people to create comic books as marketing tools.
Awesome.
So that would be stuff that was, sort of in pop culture, like Lego and movie studios and TV networks. But then I worked on comics for pharmaceutical companies and I'm trying to think of the craziest category.
We're going to be right back.
Hey, listeners, if you're anything like me, all apologies to your family. I'm just kidding. It's likely that they made you this way. No, I'm talking about that I'm always looking for more G.I. Joe content, and I think I've found it. Stop what you're doing. Okay, don't stop listening to this podcast. Can't you multitask? And go to Facebook/Special Mission Force. Brian Wilkins is curating all kinds of wonderful, nostalgic G.I. Joe content, including new pics from his fantastic Instagram page at Special Mission Force. On his Instagram, he's taking photos of Joes out in the wild, in the real world, doing stuff. For me, the two things that stand out the most are his variety of characters that he takes pictures of and like the depth of field in these pictures. It's just a wonderful job of directing focus for you. I think you really will enjoy his work. So like him on Facebook, follow him on Instagram and Twitter, and get ready for his website, specialmissionforce.com. He's a name to watch in the G.I. Joe game, so get on board now. Now back to the show.
We just came out of a gravity break, everybody. So so you worked with making the comics.
Yeah, so we made custom comics, and they were a lot of them were a lot of fun. We made a very tongue-in-cheek series for Subway that actually got written up by Bleeding Cool. They had a lot of fun ripping on that one, but it was fun. But
Did the Justice League take down Jared?
I have to be honest with you. I don't think Jared was in it because we made the decision early on that Jared didn't play well with
Jared hanging out with the
universe.
Teen Titans.
And that was before we knew some things about Jared too.
Jared trying to hang out with Young Justice. What's up, Young Justice?
We had them, if I'm not mistaken, we had the superheroes teamed up with athletes who were also ambassadors of Subway.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
But it was silly, but it was fun.
Yeah, that's cool. So now, when you were putting that together, how do you put together the artist package on that? Like, do you work with the editor, and because the editors, usually they have a stable of dudes they know and like.
Yeah, we had a pretty great group at DC who would essentially have a roster of talent that was available to work on a multitude of projects. So typically, it became about like if Subway needed a comic, what did that comic need to look like? If the DC characters were involved, what iteration of the DC characters made the most sense? Would it be current continuity? Would it be something that was a little bit more of a throwback?
Yeah.
And then based upon those needs, the story started telling itself, and the crew came together who worked on the books.
That's pretty cool. I think the most recent example, and I don't think this came out past your time with them, was the Justice League Colonel Sanders.
That was after my time, but I am a big fan of what they're doing. I think it's really funny.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Yep.
And they made it. I believe they made it exclusive to the New York Comic Con. So then that comic itself,
I think it was San Diego.
Or so was it San Diego? Yeah. So that comic became like collectible. So people were like, I want to get my hands on this Colonel Sanders.
They've done,
comic,
I think, 4 of them now at this point.
Yeah, that's really funny.
It's really creative stuff.
Yeah,
They've won awards for that too. Like it's pretty serious business.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I like very much the fan community outreach that DC Comics does. To put it like the way they interact with the fandom, I think is really strong.
I agree with you. I think it's very different now than it used to be, even a couple of years ago. But I think they've done a really good job.
Yeah, for sure. So, Kris, on this show, I love to ask my guests if you could be a member of the Joe or Cobra team, which would you be, and what would your specialty be? And now that you've watched most of your first episode of G.I. Joe, I have a feeling you might want to be on Cobra. Since
I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to go Team Joe.
Oh,
and I'm going to take the handle 4 Eyes because I'm going to glasses wearer. I'm going to represent nerddom, and that's about as creative as I can be at 11 o'clock in the morning.
I love it. And what's your specialty going to be?
Can I be somebody who reads?
Yes.
Can I be in charge of plans?
Do you want to be the
that?
proofreader for all the Joe manuals?
Yeah, that's great. That doesn't sound like a job that anybody else wants.
Yeah, no. Because we have off the top of my head, I believe it was Steph Goldstein. She was like in charge of putting together training materials or something like that.
That sounds
so
like a great
everyone
job
needs a
for me.
proofreader.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone needs a second set of eyes, and you've got 4 of them.
I've got 4 of them.
4 eyes. You're the Joe handbook, like manual proofreader. And do you go into battle at all?
Probably not.
Interesting.
I'm not a battle ready guy.
So you know comics, so you know what that means. At one point, you're gonna get a solo adventure.
That's fine.
Where you're going to be thrust into combat. That's what's going to happen. So you'll introduce you. You'll be like, I'm going to support everybody. And you're going to constantly proofread, make sure everything's all the theirs and theirs and theirs are right. And all the yours and yours are right. And then at one point, it's going to be like half the team's going to be on a mission to, Churchill Abysma. The other half's going to be in South America. The other half's going to be on furlough. And you're going to be the only guy at the pit.
Will I have any accompaniment or will it just be me?
It'll be you. You know what? We got to do a team up between Four Eyes and Snake Eyes.
Okay.
So it's you and Snake Eyes. And Snake Eyes, everyone's like, well, Snake Eyes can handle it. Snake Eyes can hold this place on lockdown, of course. And for whatever reason, you guys are going to he's going to be incapacitated, and you're going to have to save the day. But this is what's great. When it's all done, because Snake Eyes can't speak, he's not going to be able to tell anyone exactly what happened.
So there's going to be no witty banter either between Snake
No,
Eyes.
No, there will be, because you'll constantly be talking to him. And he'll just be like shaking his head and like, no, Four Eyes. Like, no, that's not how you do it. Yeah.
I think if this episode existed, you would be ripping on it in a big way.
No, I think no, because this episode, because it could easily go the way of the Viper is coming, which is one of the classic G.I. Joe episodes. And this could easily, by the way, for no reason, we have Storm Shadow slam dunking a basketball.
Sure.
That is dumb. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't need it. I'm sorry, it's not a basketball. It's one of the Joes' helmet. So it turns out Storm Shadow was not a traitor the whole time. Hawk realizes it, and everyone's cool. We had a little brief appearance by Snake Eyes. The day is saved.
It's kind of a long way to go to get there.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And for no good reason.
And
we're on a basketball
The
court.
military is a very expensive operation. It was probably billions of dollars in cost just to get to this resolution.
Yes. Now, he did do it to rescue Hawk, so that's important.
Understood.
Like, he didn't do it just to get there. So, that was his plan. I just, I don't know what any of that has to do with playing basketball.
Oh, there's Chuck
Yeah,
Patton.
there's Chuck Patton. You got it.
Yep, you can see him at Long Beach Comic Expo.
Go
if I may.
live February 16th and 17th, guys. Go to Long Beach Comic Expo. See Chuck Patton and be like, Chuck, why was Storm Shadow playing basketball at the end of Shadow of a Doubt? I need to know the answers. Yeah. So I think you and Snake Eyes team up, I think would be fantastic. And it would absolutely be. And it starts with, that it starts with him helping you without you knowing it.
Well, I'm probably going to need that.
So like you're like in the hallway and you're like you fire a gun and it misses wildly, but he like throws a dart and knocks a Cobra in the head and knocks him out, and you're like, I did it. You're like, I must have did it.
So I'm completely deluded. I think
in the
I'm
beginning,
acing
yes,
this thing.
Yes. And then halfway through the adventure, you guys meet face to face, and you're like, Snake Eyes, you've been here the whole time, and he puts his hand over his mouth like, shh.
There's a little touch of like Henry and Indiana Jones in here too.
Yes.
Okay, I can see that.
And then he realizes. And then you start to doubt yourself.
Did I get that wrong? Was his father's name?
Yes,
Henry?
father's name is Henry. Yeah, and so then you doubt yourself because you're like, man, I was getting all this confidence. I was doing everything myself this whole episode, but you don't say episode because you're in it. But I was getting all this confidence built up, and now I'm nothing. And then Snake Eyes is like, no. But as he's literally for real consoling you, he actually does get taken out, and then you have to flip the tables and really rise up. So at the end, you guys are like, we're bros.
We are
bros. And then everyone shows up and they're like, what happened? It's a big mess. The base is all in shambles. And they're like, what happened? And you just look at him, you go, ask him. And Snake Eyes like,
So next episode, I'm back at my desk job and we never mention any of this again.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Good.
I mean, that episode writes itself, Chris.
All right, I'm in.
Itself.
I'm in.
Oh my God, Four Eyes, welcome to the Joe on Joe team.
Yeah, I'm in.
And more importantly, thank you for being a guest on this show.
Yeah, I think you softened my opinion a little bit.
Did we exorcise some
I'm going to try
demons?
harder. I'm going to leave you with that promise. I'm not going to say I'm going to be a super fan. I'm
Sure.
going to try harder.
Well, I will do my best to point you in the direction of the good stuff.
Please.
And try to win your heart over. and I look forward to seeing Four Eyes on a peg card somewhere soon.
Oh, you and me both.
Oh my God. Kris Longo, Long Beach Comic Expo, Geek Riot Media, thank you so much for being on Joe on Joe.
Thank you, Joe. This was a lot of
A
fun.
real delight. And now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.